I am Mike the Apologian. Have you ever heard a Muslim say something like this?
Allah is one, absolutely unique, not part of creation, not limited by time, space, or form. The Quran.
On this video, I would be debunking the Tawheed, which is the Muslim concept of God, and showing you why the Muslim concept of God cannot be the true God, using the Quran and logic. According to these passages of the Quran that is on the screen, we see Allah identifying himself in a plural form, we and us. The Muslim apologists would try to defend this by saying this is not the plural of quantity, rather it is the plural of majesty. Meanwhile, there is nowhere in the Quran where it says that that plural is the plural of majesty. But rather, when we read the Quran, we find out that Allah is multi-personal, which the Muslims disagree with because they believe Allah is Unitarian, meaning Allah is just one person and not multiple persons. One of the passages of the Quran that proves that is in Surah chapter 4, verse 126, where it explicitly identifies Allah as the owner of everything that is in the heavens and everything that is on the earth. And when you parallel this verse to Surah chapter 21, verse 89, Allah is seen identifying himself as the supreme inheritor. And since a person cannot inherit something from himself, according to the definition of inheritance, then it follows logically that Allah has to be at least two persons for him to be the owner, at the same time be the inheritor, because Allah cannot inherit from himself. And in Surah chapter 19, verse 64, it shows that Allah has to be multi-personal. Because if you read Surah chapter 19, verse 63, Allah identifies himself as we, the one who grants paradise to everyone who obeys him. And in the next verse, which is verse 64, Allah then speaks and he says, we do not descend unless we have been sent by your Lord. The Lord there is also Allah, which is the Lord of Muhammad. So in this passage, we see Allah being multi-personal. This passage clearly shows Allah being at least two persons, one person of Allah sending the other person of Allah, just the same way we see in the previous passage, where I show one Allah being the inheritor and one Allah being the owner. So this passage clearly shows Allah being multi-personal. And Surah chapter 33 verse 56 clearly says Allah and his angels pray for Muhammad. Now, if you read the translation, you will not see the word pray. You will see the word sending blessings. The word pray was substituted for the word blessings. If the author wanted to use the word blessings, he would have used the Arabic word baraka. Because the word baraka, according to Arabic language, it is blessings. But the word baraka is not used. Instead, the word yusanli is used. The word yusanli derives from the word salah, which derives from the word dua. Dua means supplication. So according to this verse, we can see Allah subjugating to Allah, making them at least two persons. And one of the biggest problem in Islam, if not the biggest problem, is the Quran being eternal. The Sunni tradition teaches that the Quran is uncreated, therefore the Quran is eternal. And at the same time, it teaches that Allah is eternal. As a matter of fact, it teaches that Allah is the only eternal being. So if Allah is the only eternal being, and the Quran as well is eternal, then it follows logically that the Quran is Allah, therefore worthy of worship. So now we have Allah, who is multi-personal, and at the same time we have the Quran, which is also an eternal being. So if the Quran is eternal, then the Quran is God. And if the Quran is God, then the Muslim, by logical necessity, have to worship the Quran. And one of the biggest problems with the Muslim concept of God is that it defies logic. Islam do not hold to divine simplicity, which is the fact that God is identical to his attributes. Because God is not made of parts. Because if God is made of parts, then he is imperfect. For example, the Muslims say Allah's power is a distinct part of Allah. And this distinction is a real distinction, which according to the definition of real distinction, are distinction which can be separated and exist independently from each other. And if Allah's power is separate from Allah, it means that Allah depends on something external from himself to be able to act. And God, by definition, is independent from anything else other than himself. So therefore, it follows if Allah is dependent from something external from himself, then it follows logically that Allah cannot be God, because God by definition is independent. And number two, the attribute of eternality, which means God by necessity must be eternal. If that attribute is separate from Allah, that means if we apply modal logic, there is a possible world in which Allah will not even exist. And God by necessity must exist in every possible world. So therefore, if there is a possibility that Allah cannot exist in every possible world, it follows by logical necessity that Allah cannot be God, because God by definition must exist in every possible world. These are few of the many logical problems the Tawheed, which is the Muslim concept of God, runs into when it is critically criticized and analyzed. And on this note, the Tawheed is false, and therefore the Muslim concept of God is false. Please like, share, and subscribe to support this channel. God bless you.